book could be an incredibly powerful tool that would help your law firm grow. How? Well, a book makes you an author, and an author has higher authority than most other people for the reason is that they are a published author. So how do you go about creating a book that's actually going to help you grow your law firm? You hire an expert who's been there and done that for so many other attorneys. Meet Melanie Herschorn. She is an absolute expert in book publishing and promotion and helping law firms grow their business with their published book. Tune into this podcast episode and learn from this expert how to grow your law firm using the book. Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast. And I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel. And the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me. And hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you. Welcome to another podcast episode of GLF Podcast. I have a terrific guest with me here today. Melanie Herschorn from Big Impact Books is someone you should definitely know if you have never published a book but thought about it, or have seen other attorneys who have successfully published books and leveraged them to grow their business. Melanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sasha. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I've heard your content on other podcasts, really like what you had to say about self-publishing and how to leverage books for growing legal businesses. Before we dive into that, tell us your background story. How did you get started in this business and why?
Okay, well, it was definitely not linear. I started out in celebrity PR in Hollywood, and when a certain celebrity told me off on my birthday twice, I said, that's it, I cannot do this anymore, I'm going to get a master's in journalism. And so not the next day, but soon after, I graduated with a master's in journalism. And then
Can you share who that was?
I'll just say she's a famous redheaded comedian who may or may not have gotten in trouble with our former and soon to be again.
We all now know who that was, but we'll pretend that we don't.
Okay.
Got it. I can imagine that, and that was probably very unpleasant.
It was very unpleasant. But at the same time, I'm glad it happened because it was the nudge that I needed to get out of that space and into the next part of my career, which was working as a journalist. Mm-hmm. And I feel like once you're a journalist, you're always a journalist in some way. I still use my journalism every single day of my life. And so I worked in radio news. I was a news anchor and a reporter on the radio, and I loved it. And it was around that time that I was probably 3 years in, I decided, okay, I've been married a bunch of years. I want to have a baby. So I planned to have a baby as much as you can in a non-election year. And sure enough, I'm 5 months pregnant and I get laid off. So then it was like, okay, now what? I remember coming home that day crying on a neighbor's shoulder who I barely even knew. I'm unemployed and I'm unemployable because I was pregnant, right? Nobody wants a pregnant lady to start working for them. But I was lucky that a newspaper managing editor called me and she said, hey, can you freelance for us? And I said, I'm pregnant. She's like, I don't care. Come. So I freelanced for the next year. But as luck would have it, we were moving across the country for my husband's job. So I got to start again. And this time it was designing and manufacturing breastfeeding clothing. Because that's what I wanted to do next.
Got it. I was
And
like, why? It's such a transition from one thing to another.
it's such a transition, but I've always loved fashion. And really, the thing that I love doing is helping people who are in a tough spot and making their lives a little bit better. And so I designed manufactured clothes, sold them on Nordstrom.com, on Amazon, and boutiques. And I was helping moms. And running a retail business is really hard. And I learned a lot of things and I loved it. And it was also tough. And I made a bad hire in year 7. I hired a woman to help me with my marketing. And unfortunately, every day she belittled me till I lost all faith in my abilities as a person who could market themselves. She would say, "How do you have a master's degree, Melanie? You're so boring." And other great things I don't need to recount. But anyway, it got to the point where I was so beaten down I couldn't even open the door to my home office. So I knew it was time for a change. And when I looked back at everything I had done, the thing that sort of was the through line was marketing. I was helping people share their story in a way of marketing. And so publishing was sort of this wonderful outgrowth of that because every single day I get to help people see what makes them special and help them put that into a story and then leverage that to make more money, which is really a culmination of PR, journalism, entrepreneurship, and marketing. And I get to do all of that every single day. And if you'd like to know why attorneys, it's because they're really smart humans who say a lot of big words that we lay people don't understand. And I can help them bridge that gap so that they can send out a book to a potential client and sign the client simply because the client read their book and sees the value that they offer.
But complete the journey, the story of like how you got to where you are today, helping other people publish their books.
Sure.
So,
So I was writing a book about marketing, a book.
got it. Okay.
And I was helping authors and I decided I was going to publish a book about marketing a book, which is very meta. And what happened was I found a hybrid publisher to publish my book. And as I shared with you, I'll kind of go into the story a little bit, but one night I was lying in bed reading my books that I always read every night before I go to sleep. And I got to the bottom of the page of this book I was reading and realized I hadn't read a single word. And what was bothering me was the fact that I didn't trust this publisher. There was a lot of predatory behavior in the publishing space. The minute you write author on your LinkedIn, you start getting these spam messages. Hey, we'll make you a star. Just pay us $5 billion. And there's a lot of crap out there. And so I unfortunately fell prey to this publisher. And I left my money with her. I didn't even ask for it back, but I took my intellectual property and I left and I published it under my own imprint. And so one of the things that's very important to me is helping people publish under their own imprint, having their own intellectual property maintained, keeping their royalties. I don't want to own part of their idea, but I want them to own their idea and to share it with the world.
Got it. And now you primarily help attorneys share their insights with their potential clients or their marketplace, their networks. In the world where there are probably tens of thousands of titles being published every year, yet people continue to publish them, and so many ideas have already been written about so many different times. Yet a book, you and I know this, is still a very powerful tool for growing a business. Imagine that you're not talking to a marketing guy, but an attorney who's been doing this, practicing law, whatever practice area, criminal defense, family law, whatever it may be, 20, 25 years. And for the last 5 years, man, the stories that I can tell and the practical advice that I can give in the book, but how do I, even if I wrote it, how would I go about growing my business? Because voila, I have a book.
That's a great question because you're right. A book in and of itself is not going to do much. It's like if you don't market the book, it's like having a beautiful Bugatti in your driveway that doesn't have any gas in it. It's not going to go anywhere. That's why marketing is such an important component of the book publishing process.
But I'm a lawyer. I hate marketing.
Well, that's why you don't have to do it. We just do it for you. So
Tell me more.
we build marketing right into our publishing package. So that includes helping you with a strategic plan for, well, what happens once the book is out? What do I do with it? That includes leveraging your network. That includes pitching you to podcasts so you can be on podcasts just like this one, sharing your expertise, because Sasha's doing me this favor of letting you, the listener, know that I'm an expert because he says I am, which means obviously I'm an expert, right? And that's the same thing. So when you, as an attorney, you, the listener, are talking on a podcast, the podcast host is elevating you and your credibility. Another thing we do is we help with the Amazon bestseller campaign, which is a very controversial topic because some people are like, that's the most important thing ever. And then other people are like, that's a load of crap. So I say it's a nice to have, but it is not a marketing plan in and of itself, but it doesn't hurt to have it. So we do that as well. And another piece is we share a press release out to the media, because having logos that show you've been published or written about in media outlets, that is another credibility booster.
Yeah.
So we show you what to do with the book and we help you do it as well. Plus, I had a client once, he started posting on LinkedIn in the way that we talked about. He has to start posting on LinkedIn. And within 3 weeks, he was getting calls for speaking events. And one person hired him to speak at their event and they bought 300 of his books.
Sure. I also really like the tactic where when you publish a book, and let's imagine that your family law space or estate planning space, almost anything, maybe with exception of some criminal defense stuff like DUIs, you probably do not really care to publish a book about that. Maybe you do, but I don't see that there is a good marketing play to grow your business. But for almost everything else, writing a book and then promoting the book through your website could be a very powerful tool, especially if the book is written in a very reader-centric way, like telling a story and answering frequently asked questions throughout the book. I think it really applies to those attorneys where their prospective clients have a longer buyer's journey. For example, for estate planning, nobody one day just like, I need to get an estate planning lawyer now. No, it's like they've been thinking about it for months, often quarters, more often than not, years. I'm in my mid-40s, I'm 46, I have 3 kids. I've been thinking about getting an estate planning lawyer for a couple of years. And there will be a point in my life where I'll be like, today's the day. And I will go to a few websites, probably. Yes, obviously we have clients who do this, but I will probably go to a few websites. And perhaps one of the websites I will go to will have a very practical book in a story time format. That will be like, here are some do's and don'ts, and some frequently asked questions, and some stories that you should be aware of because anything can happen. And we learn best through stories. I like story formats. I actually did write a book, and I haven't published it yet, but I wrote a book, and it's a business novel for lawyers. So, and the reason why I chose that format was because a lot of practical books that are written, they're boring as shit. Just super boring. And by the way, the first sin of marketing is don't be boring, or cardinal rule of marketing: don't be boring.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Write something
it
that's
is
actually
being
interesting.
boring. Yeah.
Yeah, it's being boring. That's the sin. Correct. So I think that if you publish a book, in addition to everything that you've listed, just having it on the website, just like you do on your website, it gives you that credibility boost also. And once you put that book into somebody's hands, you can charge $1 for delivery so that it's not just spammers who are downloading it or who are requesting it and you're wasting money. But just for $1, you deliver that book. Who stands out in the marketplace? You do.
That's right.
Now, All right, so I understand now how to grow the business. So you put it out there, and people who even have a thought of hiring an attorney, they grab your copy, or you can help them grab that copy by
Yeah.
promoting it in various ways. There are so many different ways to promote a book, and it's not complicated. And like Melanie, you said, it could be done for you. A lot of it could be done for you. Now, what about the daunting task, the soul crushing idea of writing a book? What is there a life hack to producing a book other than hiring a ghostwriter? Which, in all actuality, like this is what I did. I hired a ghostwriter. I've accumulated ideas for years and years and years for the book, and he just helped me pour it on paper, and then we edited it together, and it came out really well.
Okay, so that's wonderful. What I
$30,000 for
yeah,
somebody who may be like, oh, that's a little expensive. I want somebody who was really good.
I mean that's a pretty standard
Pretty
price.
standard. Okay.
Yeah, I mean ghostwriters can be over $100,000.
Yeah.
It just depends. So what I do is I act as a book coach and
Mm-hmm.
I sort of coax the story out of the client. And I mentioned that I use my journalism every single day. That's one of the ways I do. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to outline the book together. And then if you're the kind of person that likes to go off and write, then by all means. But there are a lot of people who would rather talk the book out. And
Mm-hmm.
when I get to sit on Zoom with a client weekly, where I ask a whole bunch of questions and get all the answers, then we put that puzzle piece into the place where where the hole is, because we already see the big picture of the outline, so it's just a question of filling it in. So I help get the book out of them, and that can take about 3 to 4 months depending on how often we meet.
Yeah, that makes sense. My book actually took considerably longer. Considerably. I think close to a year.
A year just to
Close to a
wow.
year. Hmm. Yeah. And I haven't published it, and it's been written for close to a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, what's the hold up here?
Can't really put my finger on it.
Well, let's talk about it. Is
Let's talk
it
about it.
are you a little concerned or nervous, like what people might think about it?
No,
Okay.
no.
Is it that you don't think it's finished? It's not perfect?
It's finished. It's never. No book is ever perfect. So because it's highly subjective. So that's one thing that I'm never really worried about is whether it's perfect or not, because it's all in the eye of the beholder and intelligent people. We all think that we're frauds to a certain degree, right? So like I just set that thought notion aside and said like it's not going to be perfect. If somebody reads it and they love it, they love it, and if somebody starts reading it and they hate it, they hate it, and it's all very subjective.
Okay. Is it that you haven't figured out which type of publishing will work best for you?
No, never thought about that. I don't know. Other things got in the way, I guess. But this is where I have done this process without a publisher. I had the idea, I flushed it out on paper, not completely, but I had the outline and I had a lot of talking points for the book. Pages and pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. And I've assembled it over quite some time in my head. And then I put it on paper within a very short period of time, like days. And that's when I found the right ghostwriter. And it took us a few meetings over a considerably long period of time to get it all on paper. And I think it's really good. But because I never worked with a publisher, it kind of just stayed in that stage. It's a really good manuscript. I feel like it's a really good manuscript.
Okay, so maybe this is the sign you needed. Just
Maybe,
publish it.
maybe, maybe,
Put it
maybe,
out into
maybe,
the world.
maybe,
Now
maybe.
you
There
got
you
a whole
go.
bunch of your listeners who are going,
The,
I kind of want to read this already, buddy. Like, where's your
it's
book?
well, but listen. What makes it super cool is that again a very very different type of a business book. It's a business novel. Every idea, every strategy, every tactic is written about in a novel format. So you don't sit there and like read the how-to book chapter by chapter, how to do this. How no, it's. I can tell you the storyline. It's an attorney who is stuck. He has a small law firm. He's not struggling for money, but things are not going great. And then he decides to, with his sister's advice, who is a great dentist, and she has a very sizable, very profitable dental business. And she tells him, you need to get an advisor. This is how I grew my business. You get an advisor. And so he didn't know where to go for an advisor. And he goes to a conference, and on the speaking roster, he sees his old law school buddy who is speaking. And he looks him up, and he's doing incredibly well. So after the speaking engagement, our main character goes to his old law school buddy and says, "Dude, help me out. Take me under your wing." He's like, "I will for 24 months, as long as you follow exactly what I tell you." And so in the next 24 months, he helps him considerably grow his law firm. And the reason why I could write that book, or I could create that book, my ghostwriter definitely helped me put it on paper, was because at the time when I started writing it with him, I've had 23 years of management experience, and I've only managed small businesses, and I know how to scale them up because that's exactly what I've done. My current business, marketing company, we just wrapped another great year. Our annual growth rate is 26.7% on annualized basis, 7 years in a run.
And what would it be like if you could share your book out with potential clients, sending it out to people in your network?
Probably, probably
You
would be
could,
good.
it would
Probably
be
would be
good.
good.
You could,
Probably
you
would be
could
good.
send it out and get stages opening up to you. You
Yeah,
could get podcast opportunities open to
probably,
you.
probably
Oh,
all of the above.
definitely.
Probably all of the above.
Plus, current clients. You know how it costs less to retain a client than it does to get a brand new one? But if you sent out your book to current clients,
Yeah, wrong audience for many of them because they've been with us for some time and they're already successful. They already passed that point.
right, but wait. So that you send it to them and you say,
And
here's
ask
one
them.
for you, here's one for
Uh,
you, and here's one for a friend. Can
I
you
did
share?
not think about that earlier, so thank you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting on this podcast. This podcast is about 2.5 years in the running. I've interviewed a lot of people, but I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to like open up about my business ideas and like the things that I'm doing here in the background. So this is a riveting conversation for me because it just took a very unexpected turn. And you and I, before we hit the record button, we obviously did not script this. We did not think about it. I never mentioned that I actually wrote a book.
No.
So very interesting. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen, law firm owners, and most of our listenership and viewership, obviously, and readership, because we publish this podcast in every format, are law firm owners, typically smaller law firm owners. We just uncovered an interesting business idea. And yes, I do definitely see a lot of value in publishing the book. Obviously, I wouldn't have started on this journey, but here I'm stuck not having it published for a year. So it's been completed for a year now. Very, very, very interesting. For someone who is watching this, listening to this, or reading this, what's the right starting point? Like, how do they begin this journey?
Well, you probably have ideas, but you may not be able to figure out what is a good idea for a book. And if that's the case, hop on a call with me. I would be more than happy to chat through it with you. And my calendar is just meetmelanie.vip. So hop on a call. And if you're saying, you know what, I'm gonna do this myself, I don't need help, which I probably isn't one of your listeners, but if that's the case, people are like, I'm just gonna do it myself. Well, then I would start with your outline. So what are the things that you really want to share? What are the personal stories? What are the client wins and transformations? What are the cautionary tales? What makes you special? Because you are. What makes you different than the attorney down the street who does the same thing that you do, but not really because you do it in your own way? And don't feel like you have to write it in order. That's like, when I worked at the newspaper, I didn't even write the headline of my article. Someone else did. And that's the last thing that got plunked
Yep.
on there. So, I'm currently working on my next book. I've written chapters 1 through 10, and I'm working on the introduction now. So,
That makes sense.
don't feel like you have to go in order because then we get stuck. Because we're like, well, I didn't finish 2. How can I go on to 3? No, just do bits and pieces and know that it will come together.
Makes sense. And Yeah, just like a business plan, you don't start with the executive summary. People start reading the executive summary, but the executive summary is the last thing that actually gets written for the business plan. Makes great sense. The domain of your website is yourbigImpactBook.com. What is your email address? One more time.
Oh, well, my calendar is meetmelanie.vip.
No kidding. Meetmelanie.vip. There's a new extension, VIP now. I did not see that one before.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. And are you on LinkedIn?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I'm on
Okay.
LinkedIn. But
Okay.
Hershorn is not the easiest last name to spell. But
It
I'm
is
the
not.
only one.
Herschorn. I have to check with my other screen here.
Yes, but I'm the only Melanie Herschorn, I think maybe in the world. So
Amazing.
got that going for me.
Melanie, thank you so much for sharing this actually very, very, very valuable insights and getting me indirectly to speak about my book. So very cool.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.